Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Taarika Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Today, we're beginning our new podcast series, Career Choice, The Intelligent Way, a collaboration between Taarika Foundation and Mybraindesign. We're joined by two expert guests, Dr. Sweta Adatia and Dr. Leena Khanzode, who will guide us through the science behind our brains, the different brain types, and whole brain skill building to empower us youth to navigate our future with clarity and confidence. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving. It's your host, Seerat, here with the next episode of Career Choice, The Intelligent Way. In the last episode, we learned about different brain types that lead us to different cognitive maps. Today, we're going to learn how we can identify what brain type we are. So let's dive right in. Why is it important that we get to know ourselves, our thinking patterns, and our strengths and weaknesses?
Thank you so much again for having me here. Yes, it is very important for us to understand our strength because then we can play out that. And then, whatever, so for example, I'm driving a car, I should know what is the front mirror, but I should also know the back mirror. I have to do the shoulder checks. So, the back mirror is like my weaknesses, and front mirror is like my strength. So if I know what is my strength, then I can play by my strength. And the interesting thing, Seerat, is that the strengths and this kind of not so strength or the weakness starts hardwiring, getting hardwired by the age of 13. So it's a good place to begin to start to understand what am I going to be good at and what I can very quickly learn.
I see. Dr. Lena, do you want to add?
I would just echo what Dr. Shweta just said. She said it very simply and yet like helped us understand. So there's no more I would like to add at this point.
Yeah, I really like that Dr. Shweta you used an analogy like we did in the previous ones. So the strength is the front mirror, so what you see more clearly, and then the back mirror is your weakness is what you still keep in account, but you don't like use it or see it.
Yes. So most people try to fix their weakness. And that is what we don't believe in because, then you're trying to take a very long time on building that skill. Rather, here you work on your strengths so that you can build that skill and very quickly progress. See, there are lots of opportunities. Life is running like that at opportunities and then a lot of distractions. The world with all the social media and all the things and the pings and so many things are happening. I mean, choices have widened so much, so it's best to focus on our strengths, play by that, be committed to it. And then once you become committed to that, obviously magic will happen. It's all about, sticking on to that strength of yours.
Yeah, I understand. It reminds me of the strength-based approach where you focus on the strength and you don't really you work on the weakness, but not that much. So
Yes.
all
So
of
we,
these
we
like
generally have a formula of 3:1. So three times you push your strengths and then one time you push on the weakness.
I like that. So, a brain type, we like to find out one's brain type by looking at their thinking patterns and strengths and weaknesses. So, how do you like to learn about someone's brain type?
See, brain typing is a very, very vague term, but because different methodologies have used different things, right? Now, if I'm talking of an EEG electroencephalogram, I'm talking a very different thing. If I'm talking of a psychometric assessment, I'm talking a very different thing. But let's come back to the my brain design, which we have developed over a period of time, where we talk of the four parts of the brain. So the left half of the brain, right half of the brain, the upper part of the brain, and then the lower part of the brain. So each part of the brain, it's not like it's an anatomical classification. So I don't take the brain and then cut into four pieces. It's a metaphorical representation of the qualities pertaining to that part. So for example, when I'm talking of a left-sided thinking pattern, I would expect people to have a linear approach, step-by-step things, very mathematical, very analytical, tool based, more organizational, more data design or data analysis. While if we talk about the right, it's more creativity, a lot of out of the box thinking, a lot of design, people, empathy. So, how each part of the brain plays a role in my dominant thinking decides what qualities I would naturally display, what would be my natural behaviors. So, when I decide between the four, for example, for Seerat, if I give you a questionnaire and we decide out of the four parts, largely for 60% of the people, two parts are dominant. So, for example, if I have your dominant brain as the left, then obviously I will anticipate these behavioral qualities to be very evident in you. Once I know that, then obviously, with those behavior, skill building in, let's say, analysis or technology, anything to do with IT, anything to do with a detailed AI, robotics would be very quick and easy for you because it's like a key and a lock. Now you gave the brain the exact lock and a key, and then boom, it just opens up.
Mhm.
I see. So that reminded me, you said there was like four parts of the brain, and I was like reading through your book yesterday, and there was a page, and it was like you can be a combination of a few different brain types, and you said that I think one and three, which was analytical and like method based, those are like
Yeah.
cross sectional. So do these four brain types, are they like dominant in each part of the brain?
Yes, so very true. I think your memory is very good, working memory, because you did short-term memory as well, because both of the points you perfectly caught. So type 1 is yes, analytical, left upper quadrant, what we were talking about. Type 3 is left lower quadrant, which is talking about the process. The right upper quadrant, which we are talking of, type 2 is innovation. And then type 4 is about people, empathy, cooperation, analysis with people, or, sort of a compassion-driven approach. So type 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, each of us, you, me, Dr. Leena, anybody, when we do a cross sectional analysis and we have a lot of data which we accumulate. In fact, Dr. Herman did this very big trial, and millions of brain types were in that. Now, Herman's trial, Neatling's trial, and Mybraindesign, it's a validated tool across. So it's the same science, whole brain thinking, which is taken up by each of the tool and slightly modulated for the outcome which is desired. 60% of us will have two parts of the brain which will dominate. So I can have a type 1 and a 3 type of the thinking, or I can have a 1 and a 4. I can also have 2 and a 3. So it depends on which type of the combination is coming through. Now that is 60%, but 1% of the people can have all the four brain types. So it's like type 1, 2, 3, 4, all in equal proportion. Few percentage of the people have three parts of the brain which are dominant, and very few people have one part of the brain which plays out. For example, if it's a right upper quadrant which is playing out, then all of it, all of their life is all going to be about innovation, new thinking, pushing the boundaries, let's do something innovative, cutting edge, creative, enterprising. So I would expect a type 2 dominant person definitely 100% eventually, getting to land up in an entrepreneurship or an enterprise initiative, because impossible for that person to follow a routine, to do a 9 to 5 job, to work under someone, to have an organization. So it's so interesting that the prediction or the ability to decide, that is in our studies, it was found to be 86%, which means the margin of error, when I pick up Seerat's brain and say that, hey, this is what you're likely to do, I am 86% confident and specific that this is what you will eventually land up doing. And that is also what our retrospective data and analysis also suggested. Because when we gave this, and then the students were followed up after their bachelor's program, they went into the job after 5 years. And when we recollected the data, this is exactly what we found. So it's very interesting that you can be that sure.
That's so fascinating. Wow.
Yeah,
This is very interesting to kind of hear about that. You actually, it's almost like, you conduct an experiment, you come up with a hypothesis, and then you kind of run the experiment to see the outcome, and it matches with what you thought, right? That's
absolutely.
amazing. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Dr.
And
Shweta.
and we had quite a large sample size, so it is very statistically robust analysis, so we can be, because sometimes these are moral decisions, when you're talking to a youngster, and then the youngster has certain interests, certain passions, certain kind of academic pursuit, and then the marks are coming completely in a different direction. Parents want something else, peers pressure completely different, and then the environment in which they are living. Now, for example, if you talk about very very fancy AI, even Dubai is not ready, as yet. So obviously in the Bay Area, it's a very different thing altogether. In Silicon Valley, totally different things. So it also depends on where the person is in that context. When we match that with this type of the brain, then the formula gets even easier. And I think, Dr. Leena, you and me both did not have anything at all, right? We shared our story in the first episode that we just picked it up, and then we just went ahead and did what we had to do, and life just turned out. There were no twists and turns. There are some twists and turns, and then we had to just go through it. But these guys have, it's like going with a torchlight, and you have to walk the path, but then there's a torchlight showing you the path.
That's amazing. Yep. Lucky them.
Yes.
Yeah, that was well said. I really liked the research study, like Dr. Lena mentioned. I liked that part. And yeah, you mentioned that you can be a different part, and then the part of your brain that like stands out or works the most, that's how you can predict what would happen in the future. So it doesn't have to be like their first job, but eventually
Mm,
some sooner or
correct.
later they'll get there. Yeah.
Correct. And
I
and
think
the
that was
idea is
really
not to remain boxed. The idea is not pigeonholing. Idea is not to say, oh, I'm just a type 2 and I can only do innovative stuff. It's about that awareness. The moment I'm aware that, look, this analytical thing is going to be very tough for me. It's not that I can't do it, but it's going to be a lot of effort which is going to be utilized. While here it's a comfort zone for me where I can very quickly get through it. So it's about the awareness, and eventually, because I will keep meeting different types of brains. For example, Dr. Leena's brain very likely is going to be a lower brain, which I can predict, and we can do it and check it. So she's going to be more of a person which is organizational driven and, a lot of data driven, along with a lot of empathy and concern. So where combination between 3 and 4. So if that is the case, it's not that she doesn't want the upper brain. She does want an innovative brain, but that is the skills which she will eventually develop. What we call the whole brain skills. But primarily, her focus would be the entire career and all the dealings, communication, profession, etc., would be from the dominant brain. Does that make sense, Seerat?
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, very well put. I think, yeah, it made sense to me. I'm yet to tap my upper brain though.
that, that's all this is about, right? The moment you're aware, the moment you get feedback, then the question comes is, for example, say that I am an upper brain. Let's assume that I'm very analytical, very innovative, very approach driven, which is futuristic, and I meet someone like Dr. Leena. Then that becomes like a whole brain team, because then all the deficiencies that I have would be there in Dr. Leena, and whatever she has will be there in me. And that is the beauty of working together. The diversity, whatever we have in terms of the thinking patterns, we unite that diversity and then make things happen.
Is this like
That's
opposite?
awesome. Yeah.
Is this like opposites
So
attract?
Exactly. Thank you for saying that, because I was just going to mention that, you read my mind, that in marriages, what happens is, yes, opposites do attract, and then they start to have that, oh, she does not behave like me, he does not behave like me. Then that conformity bias comes in, that I want him to behave exactly what I want the person to be, right? So my teacher, Dr. Kobus Neethling, used to say very nicely, he would say that let's celebrate these differences. When we celebrate these differences, then we make just life very interesting, right?
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was
You
well
have to
put.
think of something deeply.
No, it made sense. Yeah, I really liked it. So, Dr. Lena, what psychological tools are there that help us identify our brain type?
So I'm going to mainly think about the SWOT analysis as a tool that taps right into the strengths and weaknesses. And that in turn, then I think takes us to this quest of, okay, how do I find based on my strengths and weaknesses what brain type I am, which is what Dr. Shweta was mentioning, that her tool actually helps us get there, right? That's the one that comes to me that kind of is closest to kind of determining the brain type. I would defer to Dr. Shweta to educate and enlighten us more if there are any others.
So I think the current generation is also going through this very interesting thing of attentional issues, I think focus issues, a lot of working memory, as we just discussed. There's a lot of this consumption of social media, and so many things are going on in their brains. So I think over the period of time, these kind of tools will also become very popular. And then in the good old days, we used to have very typical neurodevelopmental analysis. We used to have the IQ, and then we used to have all the verbal skills and mathematical skills and reasoning skills and all. I think that is now a sort of a part of redundancy, because we know AI is going to do a lot of tasks, and then every single learner is going to have a customized and a personalized method in which he or she will learn. So I don't think so these kind of old classifications would apply. But yes, Seerat, if there are people who have challenges to attend, to focus, some type of dyslexia, certain reading abilities, issues with reading, issues with writing, dysgraphias, then we do have a certain set of an entire tools which a psychologist runs through, depending on what the child comes up with. So that's also a part of the entire rubric of all the tools.
I see. And Dr. Lena mentioned about the SORT analysis. So, what is it and how does it help us?
So see, in our book, we have mentioned it as sort. So basically, it's like SWOT, but then what we are trying to do is we are trying to sort youngsters' life, right? We want to sort what is the career and what is the relationship, and that's why we called it as a sort. So there's strengths again, opportunities, resistances, and then techniques to overcome those resistances. The strengths is going to be in the dominant part, as we gave the description. Let's say if it is Dr. Leena's brain, it's going to be more empathetic, very kind, approachable, lots of data, very particular, very, very meticulous, would be very careful about the time. These will be the strengths. And then those opportunities arising out of it, which means teaching, academics, helping people, support, some form of foundation, somewhere where there is help, consultancy, etc., would be part of our opportunities. But there will be certain resistances when it comes to innovation. A very suddenly a big challenge would be sort of very difficult for her to take in. And then the techniques to overcome would be, let there be some micro stressors, let there be some micro experiments, even some form of micro, even for that matter, I tell the students that simple things such as food. If you have never tasted something which is out of your comfort zone, you start to taste it little by little. You are basically kindling that lobe. You're trying to build that innovation brain which you didn't have before. Small, seemingly looking menial tasks also matter to the brain.
Perfect. No, I really liked how you guys revamped it a little bit, and it's really much more effective to look it as sort that what are the resistance slash like handicap or weaknesses, or just personal like hesitation because I have certain strengths, and so I'm feeling like, oh, this is a new B for me, this is a new area, and that's generating a lot of anxiety or resistance, and then look at techniques to overcome that hurdle. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I liked that how you like renamed it to sort and the little pun with like over sorting kids' life. And I also really like that there's like one about like techniques to overcome the resistance because that reminded me of something you mentioned earlier that you don't just only work on like or go in the field of your strengths, you still like work on the other two parts of your brain. So I think that was cool that you don't just leave the
So we call it
parts of your
in
brain.
the system of the pyramid, we call it the flow and the grow. So you want to flow with 3 times pressure, you want to get all of that, and then grow 1 time. You don't ignore that, because as I said, shoulder
Yeah.
check is important. You don't want an accident. You do want to have a
Yeah.
look at the rear mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I like that part, T. Okay, so from a lens of mental health, why is a SORT analysis important?
So I think the way it ties in with our mental health is if you want to think about self-esteem as one of the kind of the constructs for our well-being, a lot of that depends on what I perceive as my strengths, right? And so what are my strengths in terms of external assets and internal assets? I think I like to divide them in two ways. The external assets are what's visible to the world, my talents, my I'm gifted with certain talents naturally, innately, and that's what I'm able to kind of show the world. And in our today's kind of more externally focused world where people look at, okay, what are the known things that make you shine or bring you to the limelight. So lot of the times we get focused on those external talents and we hone them, whether it's a sport or a music talent or whatever that might be. But the internal assets are, if not equal, more important, in fact, as a part that actually feeds into our emotional health or mental health. And so the internal assets are your core strengths of personality, like, you are kind, you're empathetic, your honesty, your integrity, your values that make you you, which, I think we don't talk about as much as something to be having pride in or as a source of self-esteem. But really, that's like your foundation to what you can then actually combine both the internal and external assets as your strengths to have a great self-esteem. That's one kind of way to understand how mental health can be kind of tied in with the SWOT, or this particular way of looking at how, and then on the flip side, if there are certain weaknesses or certain things that I need to work on, that awareness that is brought by certain tools or my own, like, reflection, then only when I'm aware of what I need to work on, I will work on that and overcome that hurdle. So in terms of even like generating that awareness and insight for one to then be able to accept that and accept that challenge to overcome, that can be a great way to build resilience and improve your mental health.
Yeah, you mentioned that the strengths are important to like improve your self-esteem, that oh, I know I'm actually good at something, I'm not useless. And I also liked how you said that you split it based on like external what people can see and internal what like they can't see, but like they can, but it's not like easy to see. So like the external ones is what you bring to the table, and then the internal are your like your values and your beliefs, because ultimately that's what drives the external. And then, Dr. Shweta, what do we look out for in the SOAR analysis if we're a combination of brain types?
See, combination is very much possible. As we said, out of 60%, the remaining 40% is a combination. So you can be a two brain, a three brain, a single brain, or a four brain. Now, when we are combination, sometimes what happens is it's a contrasting quadrant. So, for example, I myself is a classical example of that. So I have a very, very high innovation lobe, which is also type 2. And then I have a very, very high type 3, which is organization, data, analysis. So it's like driving a car with a brake and a pedal on. So imagine, how does the car go? It's like you're pushing the gas and you're pushing the brake both at the same time. Because here you want to be innovative, you want to be very new things all the time, challenges, but at the same time, you want everything to be delivered perfectly. You want all the data to be correct. You want everything to be step by step, analytical. So there's always this tug of war between the two sides. So when you understand that it is going to be a slow process, when you accept that, look, this is how I am, and this is how my brain will behave, then I also take into account the fact that frustrations which will stem out of it. So there will be certain frustrations, there'll be certain bottlenecks, but I am aware about those bottlenecks. And then very important and interesting is now I get somebody who is in the contrast other two quadrants to fill me as part of my team as well. So knowing the brain type, understanding the strengths of each of the part, knowing where I need to fill in as a skill, what is my job type, what am I required to be done, to be doing. For example, ikigai is a great example, right? What is ikigai? Have you heard about ikigai, Seerat?
I remembered in your book. I forgot the meaning.
Ikigai is like where you like what you do, and then world needs it. People are able to pay for it also, and that's sort of also your brain's preference. So you're matching everything all together now, and that becomes sort of the great sweet spot of success. At least the success. I won't call success more from the material part of it, because anyways that will happen. Even if you don't like your work, you can still earn a good 100 grand, and then you can be happy, or you don't need to be happy because you're just doing it for the sake of the money. But when you are happy, when you are contented, when you love what you are doing, that becomes your internal assets, as she was referring to. Then your self confidence improves, you're happy from within, you like everything that you do. There it's just a mere transaction. Here it is your sole purpose and a goal which comes in.
Yeah, there were many things you said that I liked, and also I have a side question after this. So first, you mentioned
Hmm.
that you're looking for like two contrasting things in the sort, like responses to see the different types of brain. And I guess if there's three, then you'd see like three different contrasting answers.
Yes.
And then you also mentioned that this will lead you to getting like, or to finding like a career that they would be best in, and that career wouldn't just be, oh, I'm just doing it, give me the money, but it's like I
Yeah.
actually want to do it. So I liked that part.
Yes.
And then my question
Yes.
was, earlier when we were discussing, you mentioned that a type 1 brain is like an analytical, and here you also
Mhm.
mentioned that a type 3 is that too. So what's the difference between
Yeah.
1 and 3?
So one is very deeply analytical, where they talk about data, a lot of research, uncovering of the what part of it, while the how part of it is more type three, which is more of step by step approach, linear. So it's a lot of summary based, a lot of details. It's not a high level data points. It is a very detailed summary of those data points. So one is about what, one is about how, one is about why, and the fourth one is about who. And then interesting thing is, any task that you do, if you do a walk around approach, we call it the walk around approach in the brain, you always start with a why. If you know why you're doing it, why am I doing this? Because I want everybody to live the contented and happy life. Because once they match their brains to the task that they do, it's just magic, right? So why am I doing? What is it that I'm doing? I'm getting a tool out there. How am I doing? There's a process that you go ahead and answer the questions, you go ahead and sit with the counselor, you get all the replies, and then who is part of it? So somebody is supporting you and what is happening to you. So once you complete this walk around approach in any task that you do, in fact, a lot of advertisement companies are using this exact same thing that I'm talking about. If you would have seen a Mercedes Benz advertisement, they say technically we're just perfect, everything is just our machines are top of the line. At the same time, we fulfill all your fantasies and you can sit in the best of the seats and comfort as possible. So they're talking of both sides of the brain. I don't remember a Canadian company many, many years back. I saw a big, nice hoarding of a bank saying that we don't give you our left brain, we don't give you our right brain, we give you an entire whole brain to serve you. So this is sort of, the way in which the message is also across that for example, now I am a very, very innovative driven brain, and then suddenly, if I'm given, if I'm going on a holiday and I'm given a very, very boring menu based stuff, I'm going to do 9 o'clock this and 9:20 this and 9:40 this, I'm going to be completely off, because I want some time for myself. I want to just explore. I want to do it instantly, absolutely on whatever the feeling is at that time, and then I'm completely off. So every single advertisement, everything that goes out, every kind of communication, if it caters to all types of the brain, there's always great things which happen around it. 95% of Fortune 500 companies use the entire whole brain methodology and Herman's data, because Herman is largely in the corporate space, for building their product, for building teams, for onboarding people, for the materials which goes out to the customer. So it's like an integrative method by which even companies are using it for their profits.
Yeah, I see. So you mentioned that number one, that like companies and everyone uses this too. It's kind of like their marketing technique now. And for like the difference in type 1 and type 3, I understood that type 1, it's more in depth on the data, and it's more on like who did the data, what, how. And then you mentioned 4 was about people. I might have missed what type 3 was.
Sport is about people. It's about empathy, kindness, cooperation, extension of support, teamwork. Let's do it together. I want to help you. It's all about social connect. Also, largely about socialization, because then you have an introvert and an extrovert personality which comes in. So, some people would be introvert. They don't like to talk to a large group of people, and some people would be extrovert. But largely, they will be people centric. Even an introvert person would have very close friends, very close family, where they are related quite deeply, inside with their inner self. So there's an empathy based approach which is working.
Yeah, I think I'm a 1 and 4 combination.
Yeah, okay. You should do the analysis, because what
Yeah.
happens next is also very interesting. Now, for example, if we had three different brains in the same room, which is very interesting, and that's the beauty of life. So when we do it, and then we predict that this is it, but then sometimes it comes out which is very likely because that is our perception. And here we are talking of what is my preference, So there can be a slight disconnect until you do the analysis. And the second interesting thing is after you complete your four brain parts, you get into dimensions of thinking, which is eight different brain parts. So that's no way that you can guess, and each of the person can be very different depending on the dimensions. So you may have a people centric person, but totally extrovert, like outgoing and completely with people, socializer, and a people centric person with type 4 brain who is very, very reserved and introvert. So that is where the entire thing, becomes very interesting. Now imagine the combinations and permutations. If I were to put even five people together with all these 4 by 8 designs, there'll be like unlimited number of combinations which will emerge out of it. That is the beauty of how the entire, ecosystem of different brains, when they come in and the entire thing gets operated.
Wow. Yeah, that's so fascinating. Wow. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. And I know that there's in like the book it mentioned that after you find out your brain type, then you like to go through this 5-step formula with the students. So what is the 5-step formula and how do you do it?
See, the entire idea is what is the idea? Idea is awareness about the self, awareness about your strengths, awareness about your weakness, as we mentioned as the rare mirror, and then your choices, your interests, what you like, and then what are your academic capabilities, what is your skill when it comes to academics, and then what kind of an environment that you are in, what values you harbor. Once you put all this together, the choice of the career is like a piece of cake. Once you know the career, obviously you now, for example, if I randomly even give you a minute, and we've done this exercise multiple times, and say, okay, think about all the careers, you will land up only answering the careers which you are seeing now. It is impossible for you to talk about, let's say there's something which is going to be coming when you will see that be a part of getting into a career. It's going to be a personal memory curator. Now somebody is going to curate our memories. There's going to be bionic limb supporters, somebody who will just be working on the limb. There will be people who will be only in cyber securities or cyber cloud. There'll be people only doing pharmacogenomics or nanosciences, only nanotechnologies, only material sciences, only environmental sciences in relation to Mars, because by then we will have some things on Mars, right? So you have to understand also what are your opportunities. So we call it the career consciousness expansion. Because once you have a little formula, let's say I give you a formula that everything is innovative in this box, everything is processed in this box, everything is data in this box. Now you also start to think in that lines. It does not become like a big, huge network of, unlimited options that you have. Now you start to have a vision around the careers, which is limited to that part of the brain. Once we allow you to categorize that, your life is also easy. Now it's just a simple, puzzle and a mix and a match of where your strengths are, and then what is it that is being offered in that quadrant, and you mix it. Now, very interestingly, I think Stanford and certain universities and all give some amazing courses, which is also in different quadrants. It's unlike like how me and Dr. Leena had to go through a very linear path, do a science, and then take up psychology. I don't know if that was the case. At least that was the case for me back in those times. Anybody who studies well gets into science. Anybody who does not study gets into commerce, and then humanities
Totally.
is never talked about. But today,
Exactly.
let's say in Stanford itself, I know a couple of my students also who have been there. They take up mathematics, philosophy, and politics. Now, what a beautiful combination, right? You're talking of an innovative brain, you're talking of a data centric brain, and you're also talking of people centric brain, right? You're talking of type 4. So you're trying to get people, process, data, innovation, everything all in one bucket. And that is what the modern careers have to offer, which was not the case early on.
So you mentioned that you do the test first and that makes you more like aware on based on like
Mhm.
what your skills are, your strengths, what's like harder for you, and then based on
Mhm.
that, after that, before you like decide when you have to actually know the many careers, because you mentioned so many and I didn't know like all of them. So
Yeah,
you
no,
have
it's
to.
it's, it's just there are at least 50 different types of law, criminal law and digital law and territorial law and healthcare law. I mean, I myself, first time when I was building this career consciousness, I'm like, this is never ending. I would have never thought of such a career. And 2040, if we look at McKinsey's data, if we look at a World Economic Forum, when we look at the predictions of what kind of careers is going to be, in fact, 30% of the current careers, whatever is there, it's all redundant. So there's not going to be a typical accountant, there's not going to be a typical bank, all the things, this everything would be redundant. And completely new stuff, which we would have never heard right now, would be there. And that's why somewhere I feel that, career discovery is a lifetime process, but understanding the strengths and building those skills. So we have a little skill formula also. You build that core skill which is matched to your preference, but then you start building satellite skills, and those satellite skills are based on your hobbies, because you don't ignore your hobbies as well. And those satellite skills in future possibly may become a very big business for you, for all you know, and then the core skill still feeds you and pays your bill. So it all, it is a very dynamic process, but at the same time very mathematical. So that mathematics of it we wanted to basically bring out in the book, that there's a method to the entire madness of the whole thing. And that is what the 5 steps are, what you're talking about.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you never know that if the strengths you have right now could play out and make like a full like field now. So yeah, that part I liked. And then as I was mentioning earlier, recapping, you said that after you like find out your strengths, then you like explore the many careers, because I would like go around and I'd find someone and I'd be like, that's a career. I would never think someone would do that and earn money with that. So yeah, I think opening up and actually finding more careers, and then that's how you decide this one uses this part of the brain and that's what I am, so I can use this.
Yeah, very true. And I often like to call it as a calling, not as a career, because it will eventually become your calling at certain point in time. And then, like, I cannot imagine Dr. Leena doing anything else as to what she's doing in child psychiatry, because that would be sort of the passion, that would be the calling. And then you just don't fit anywhere else, it's like the perfect key and the lock, which may happen over the period of time. But what we are trying to do is we are trying to shorten that process. We're trying to scientifically make that process very quick and formula based, so everybody can get the advantage of it, and nobody just does, test and try. Oh, let me figure it out. You have a lot of time. I think that is what where the entire crux of the future ready now lies.
I see. And so as we close off, and I have a question for Dr. Leena. As a child psychiatrist, what guidance do you provide to your patients who are stressed about career planning?
So I want to actually say that I am definitely uh, educated about streamlining that process and finding a scientific way to find your career today. So I'm going to definitely add to my toolbox when I talk to my patients. But kind of knowing the old traditional way of how people typically narrow down the career, that's what I was familiar with before. So from just even perspective of taking care of your mental health, which is where I come in, right? I certainly have a very kind of broad perspective of how I talk to them about this. A lot of times, I mean, of course, it's very nerve-wracking, and it's like very almost anxiety inducing for you to make a decision about your career when you're like 17, 18, like you're like you barely starting to get out of college, and I mean out of high school, and then you want to already know what you want to major in college and what kind of path it looks like moving forward. So I feel it's a little bit like too early for a lot of people to figure out that. Some people may have clarity and have that passion or some experience or personal story that drives them in that direction, but not everybody's in that boat. And so acknowledging that you're not like, not, there's not something wrong with you when you don't know what you want to do. It's just that you're still exploring, and that's okay. That's okay. So a lot of what I talk about is also like reassuring them that not everybody knows at that earlier in their journey of being just 17, 18, 16. Some people will know this from middle school on, this is what I want to do or be. Some people may know it by 9th, 10th grade, and some in 12th grade they're like, I'm going undeclared major because I'm not sure. And I I give them a pat on the back that I'm glad you are actually feeling a little lost and you're able to talk about it, because in today's world where people kind of who know and they are already saying this is what I'm doing confidently, for the person who doesn't know, it's really a hard thing to fit in and feel like they are unequal, or like that does trigger a lot of stress and anxiety. So that's one thing. The other thing I often do is to help them even just sometimes explore that a little bit when they are with me. And now that I have a more kind of language to talk about brain type and not just restrict it to strengths and weaknesses, I'm going to certainly use that, Dr. Shweta, and point them to your resource and your book and your testing tool. Um, so I talk about, like, okay, what are your passions and your hobbies, and what makes you like that's going to be something you want to wake up and do the next day, kind of a thing. And even at that level, like even when it is like in a very preliminary, and you maybe still explore, like, yeah, maybe this is what I think really excites me. So kind of pushing them to explore that, even though it may not be a very well known kind of career or field. But as Dr. Shweta was mentioning, the world is evolving and there is so many intersections of different, educational paths now that can create a completely new career, which wasn't there when we were growing up. We had only two or three paths and we just followed one and said, okay, this might click. And luckily it clicked for us. But there were many people who felt like, no, that was not the right path, and they took the step backwards, and then they had to figure it out, which is also okay. But given the beauty of enhancement in science and technology and knowledge, I think it is really nice that, Dr. Shweta, you kind of tapped into the need for the hour to
Yeah,
find a way for alleviating anxiety that a lot of youth feel about their
correct.
future and the career, and with the uncertainties that are constantly being posed by the world today. I think it's really good to have that direction that you have created for them. So yeah,
Yeah.
so to
So
kind of to
I generally give an
summarize.
analogy. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
generally give an analogy that, look, if you're going to a cold place, it is cold, there's no question. But all we're doing is we're giving you some jackets so that you can protect yourself in that cold. But at the same time, being mindful that yes, cold will remain. You're not doing anything to the cold. So you identify what your strengths and everything is, and understand the situation. So you will be in a better prepared way to face life and that particular confusion. And I think at 16 or 17, when I was young, I couldn't even choose a pizza, which kind of pizza what I
Yeah.
wanted to eat. So
That's the matter of fact, right? Like it's a little too early, and so I just say, okay, just it's a journey. If you figured this out at 20 or 25, it's not the end of the world. And then also, like, encourage them to shadow or meet people with the career they might be kind of intrigued by, and see what that looks like, because what we think about careers and what you actually live eventually doing that is very different. So it's also important to have some experiential kind of experience, talk to people who actually are living it, and understanding if this is where you feel like that's what you see yourself 5-10 years from now.
Yeah, that was well said. And you mentioned like three things that you usually do. One, you like help them explore different paths, and then the other one was you tell them to like shadow or like just talk to people or like professionals who they like. And then the first one you mentioned, which is my favorite, which you said that you just support them and reassure that if they don't have it figured out, it's fine. And I think that's a great way to end, because then you're showing that we have these techniques, but you don't have to have it all figured out when you're like 13. Like I think there was one analogy, Dr. Shweta, you mentioned, was it's like giving a 13-year-old to decide their career is like giving a gun to a drunkard. So
yeah,
yeah, I
I
really
agree.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Hmm.
yes. So thank you
All
so
right.
much, Dr. Shweta and Dr. Leena, for today. I learned a lot, and everything stuck with me, and I'm really glad we made this.
Yes, and thanks
Thank
again
you.
to Dr. Shweta for giving us such a good kind of overview of what amazing work you've been doing, and now we have a concrete tool to make our lives easier. So I'm really again grateful for you to bringing this to the audience who's listening, so we can let the world know there is another simpler way to narrow this down. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to both of you. And thank you to the audience also who have been listening. I think we live in a time where we have the best of science, you know. So whatever best tools that we can utilize, we should do it. And then I don't think so there is a place for confusion. It's all about clarity, commitment, and progress. So all the best to everybody, whoever is listening to this podcast.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Taarika Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every Friday, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening.